some technical issues. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Some people sent me a message that they won't be able to be here today. So yeah, apparently it's exam period or something. All right. So a long time no see. I'll open the presentation. For now, how is everyone doing? Anyone has any comments? Any news? Anything? How is the projects going?
How's your girlfriend doing? How's the life?
Well, she's fine. She's not walking yet, but we're dealing with it.
Send our regards.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah. So, you do see my screen, right? Yes, you do. Okay. Cool. So today we're gonna have our last lecture on on React. So after this, you'll have, I guess, enough knowledge to be confident in building your own website with React, or at least this group project that you're working on. Today specifically, we're going to learn about how to, about the last steps in making a React website, which is, first of all, we're going to learn a bit about routing. And since I'm talking, I might as well present. So of course, first the quiz, and then we're going to talk about routing, because up till now, all the websites that we built were basically like a one-pager, right? Like it was more like an app rather than an actual website. So we're going to learn how to do routing, dynamic routing. Then we're going to learn how to actually release a website to production, like how do you actually produce those files, and where and how you can host them. And then, we're going to go through a list of things of what else you can explore in React, and how you can, whatever you can apply to your project. So, as usual, a short quiz. Let me copy this again. I'm going to send this right here. This is always being, sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to copy this. Let me know when it works. It's just like a 4 or 5 question quiz to refresh your mind. Cool. For those who joined later, the link as usual, it's in the chat and in Slack. All right. Yeah, not a lot of people willing to take the quiz. It's fine. You can learn these things in your own time if you want as well. I'm going to start the quiz. So 4 questions. Bit of theory questions on React. So everything in React is a compiler, component, package, class. Oh, that's a lot of letter S in there. All right. Cool. So everything is a component, and everything is a package. That's usually about Node.js, but sure. So everything React is a component. Next one. Oh, sorry. If you want to run a function at the initial display of a component, which React method do you use? So whenever a component is just being rendered and you want something to happen when that appears on the user screen, what would you where would you put your function in, right? So is it use state, use effect, use at component initialized, on start? Okay, so please review this again. Be careful of what the question actually is. So if you want to run a function, the initial display of a component, right? So if you want something to run when the component was initialized, you use the use effect. Use state, that's for state variables. That's to update stuff within your component and so on. So yeah, be careful about that. Okay, so next question. Question 3. What will be the value of my number that is displayed, right? Okay, on the screen after clicking the button 3 times. So this is the example from the first time. Yeah, it might be a bit complex, but this is the example where you have the button that you click. There's a function attached to it. So be very careful. I'm asking which value will be displayed. I'm not asking about the value of the variable, my number. So yeah, let's see if that was clear. I guess it was a bit confusing, right? All right, so the correct answer was 3. And let me see if I can go back to the image, because that's also a very important one. So is this code readable? Is it clear what I'm showing here? 1? Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So be careful here, because like this might be a typical mistake for someone learning React. Here I create a state variable, right, called my number. And I have a setter for this, like I have a function that I can change the value of my number. Here, what I say, on the click of this button, I want to add 2 to my number. I ask which value is displayed. Now, be careful. Instead of, like normally, if I want that value to really be updated and shown on the screen, I have to use this function, set my number. If I don't use it, what happens is, this variable will have indeed the value that he indicated, 9 or something, right? Because I click it 3 times or something. So 6 plus 3 is 9. However, on the screen, that thing will not appear, because React will react only when there's a change, only when you use a setter function of a state variable. So that's a very, very important one. Like a lot of times when you're debugging code, if by any chance you accidentally, bumped into like an issue like this, always make sure, to double check which variables you're using and from where. There's also a result. Good job, everyone. Not so many people here, so Izine, good job, 184 points. So before I move on to the more advanced parts of React, would there be a burning question on state, components, props, anything like, because maybe some of you have tried already using React now in your project or on your own? Was there anything like confusing or something which you're not sure of? Maybe a specific topic you want to know about from React that you feel it's missing?
I want to ask a bit about views. What are views? How are they different from components?
Like React views. Okay. Yeah, I think this is more like good question. I think this is quite some advanced React, but I think this is mainly about how things are arranged in the page.
Yeah, so each page has its own view. Is there any difference? Is there anything, or is it just like a folder structure that you put your pages and views?
I see that I'm being sent to React Native. Are you sure it's React and not React Native? Just the first question.
Yeah. It's like you don't have to use React. It's like the MVC model view controller. What is the view? Like that's my question. Okay,
yeah, I'm either missing something or I'm like, I don't think I have the knowledge to really tell you exactly what I have the experience with. So React Native, which is pretty much React for phone applications. You don't use HTML there. You use something like, it's also an XML kind of thing, right? So you can see the example here. So a view in the phone world, right? It's like a div in HTML. So they kind of seem to be doing the same things in the same way. However, I think honestly, my opinion, making UIs for phones, specifically just for phones, it's usually easier than making HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So that's just my take on it. But yeah, everything I can tell is that, yeah, a view, it's normally like a div in the phone world.
Okay,
and it's the same in Flutter. So Flutter, which is like another alternative to React Native, they also use something like that.
Okay.
Right. Any other React questions? How many of you have actually used React up till now? Like, how many of you actually made a project with React? You can put just a plus in the chat or something to get an idea. Like, if you made at least one project with React, please just put a plus. Okay, 2 people, good, nice. Cheers for that. No, but honestly, is it really only 2 people or okay, 3 people? That's already better. Nice. All right. So I understand correctly, like most of the, okay, 4 people, that's good. Okay, I will assume that, was it 25% of this group has done at least one React project. I'm pretty sure it's a bit bigger than that, but yeah. All right, anyways, at any point, like now I'll go into explaining about routing. After we go through this topic, you can, think of any other questions about React. But because like this lecture, this is the time to give those questions, especially for your group project. Because after that, yeah, we actually have one more lecture where I'm going to tell you about the cloud. And then the lecture after that, that will be the last one where we just, yeah, you show your group projects. We'll say goodbye to each other. I'll send you this, to call them the certificates, and that's kind of it, right? So yeah, this is the last chance to talk about React, and so yeah, keep that in mind. I'll go back to the presenters mode. So a small recap on URLs. So when we learned about Express.js, right? We made a web server. We made an API. We've learned a bit about the parts of a URL. So those URLs, you probably like recognize them, that they're also used in the normal, like in the web browser, right? When you go to a different page or so. So in React, like just in any other like web page development, you can specify like a list of sub pages of your website. So if you're gonna look here on the right side in the HTTP URL anatomy, so these are the parts which you already recognize, right? The HTTP or HTTPS, this www, the name of your domain, top level domain, and then you recognize the port. So you've seen that already, like how in, for example, when you're making an Express app, you set a port 3000 or something. So every time you wanted to send a request to that, you had to use your local IP, or like this number at 127.0001. Like either this IP address or this, or like any of those things that I wrote in the chat. Any of those like would route you to localhost, and then the 2 dots and the port. And now what comes after that, it's the path, which like a folder structure, you can have as many of them as you want. Like you can go as deep as you want with those. So I guess nothing really, no surprising new information for you there. The next thing is the query parameters. So I think most of you tried this at least once if you made an Express.js server up till now. But yeah, the query parameters are pretty much a list of keys and values. So normally they come in the shape of text. So even if it's a number, they're just strings attached to your URL. And then the last part, like this fragment identifier, this is something a bit more advanced, which yeah, I think for now we're not going to go into like this hashtag thing. So previously, when you're using all these parameters for Express.js, you were using that to specify like what kind of request you're sending to the server, right? Like you're specifying that I want the information, let's say, about a part of a grocery list, or information about a user. So I would go to /user/something, or instead of the slashes, maybe you're using a query parameter like user ID equals and the user ID. So in the same manner, you can arrange your web page to specify what should appear at every of these paths and what should happen based on a different parameter that comes from there. So here, for example, a very typical sitemap that you'd expect, that you would see in like WordPress or like really any company web page, to be honest. So for example, there's a home page, and that home page probably has a nav bar, which can send you to 3 static pages, /about, /contact, /career, or whatever. So these are like static. This is static routing, right? You pretty much say, okay, this is one page, and it will be shown wherever user goes to this main URL. And if the user does /about, he'll be sent to this other, web page. So the static ones are quite straightforward. You just say, okay, which route goes to which page. But then you have dynamic routing. So that's where it becomes interesting. So dynamic routing, imagine you have a blog post and you have like 100 blog posts. You're not going to explicitly program each of the paths. You're not going to, like every time you make a new post, you don't want to actually have to go and explicitly say that post ID something will send you to this other page. Like you have to do that somehow programmatically, right? So that's pretty much dynamic routing. And the dynamic routing can be dynamic either through a different path or through different query parameters, pretty much. Okay, so this is the theory on it. So now we'll go directly to practice. How you do that in React. So before speaking specifically about React, in very typical web pages, like web servers, for example, if you use something like Nginx, let me just give you a bit of idea of what Nginx is. So Nginx, it's like an out-of-the-box web server, very similar to the Visual Studio Code hosting web server, live server, right? Very similar to it, but like a much more advanced thing, actually used in, like in real life servers, in real life applications. So Nginx, for example, the way it works, it's like you say, you indicate a folder in your computer, in your server, and in that folder, you have multiple subfolders, and each subfolder has an index.html file. And based on that, whenever someone goes to the link of your server, the way you arrange things in your folder, right, the way your index.html files are arranged in your folder, that's how pretty much those paths are going to appear. So this is kind of like a common thing. So that's why, those paths in URLs, they kind of remind you of how folders are in a PC. So I think that's where pretty much this came from. However, in React, with the React Router, you're able to, you don't necessarily have to arrange things in folders or files. You simply have to declare the routing. You have to explain which route sends you to which page. So we're going to start with a very simple static routing. So I have the example here, but meanwhile, I'm going to start a new project right here. So while I explain the theory, I will run all these commands to start a new project. So npx. So npx create React app routing lesson. Make sure it starts. Okay, so while this runs, it's going to take a while, I guess. So I'm going to show you this example. So first of all, there's multiple ways in which you can do routing. Of course, this is JavaScript. This is JavaScript frameworks. But I'm going to show you, well, I would say most common way how people do routing with React. So you have to download a package called React Router. You install it with npm like you installed any other npm libraries in Node or whatever. So after you run this command, you have access to it. You import it in this way. And the thing is, there's multiple components of a router. So there's routes, there's switches. We're going to go a bit through those. But pretty much this is how you import those subcomponents of it. And what I do here in the app.js, let's see if maybe I already have. No, I don't have it. So in the app.js, the main React file, what I do there, like I removed everything from the classical example, and I created this component called router. This is something that you import from this library, and inside it you should have a switch, right? Like this is pretty much the syntax. You just have to learn it as it is, and inside the switch you can have multiple routes. So you have to open them, close them, and each route has a parameter called path. And in that parameter, you declare the path like this with a slash. And what all of this page does, like this one single file, it does the following. It says, if someone accesses, it's trying to access my web page /about, he is going to be given this content. Like a paragraph. If he goes to my page /users, he's going to see this other paragraph. And if he goes to the home page or any other unknown stuff, he should see this. So yeah, to prove a bit of, it's still installing. So until I can prove you that this works the way I say it works, we'll have to look at the images. So if you look here on the left, you see if I go to the main page, in this case, localhost 3000, I see this content, this other content, and this other one. So this is static routing. It's very simple. So what you would normally not do in your project, it's actually explicitly define the content of the web page inside this route. What you would normally do is that you create a separate component, and then you import that component in this app.js, and then you say that here, instead of this paragraph, you put that component. So this is actually my next example. And the example that I wanted to show today, I wanted to go back to our Bitcoin tracker example. And I want to make like, we'll make a small web page with multiple routes where you can see the price of Bitcoin in different kind of, in different currencies. So I think here at this point, it's already best that we wait for this to happen. Meanwhile, I'll open the example, which is ready right here. Yeah, as usual, everything will be on GitHub. So let's see right here. Yeah, show on Explorer. Yeah, so this is the example that you will have in GitHub. Yeah, unfortunately, this is still running. It needs just a bit more time. Okay. I can meanwhile commit this. All right. Yeah, this is definitely taking a bit more time than expected. Yeah, also, like regarding this routing, I'm going to show you only really the basics today, which I think should be good enough for you to apply in the group projects that you're working on. However, there might be some exceptions or maybe some special things that you're trying to do with your application. So in that case, here's where all the documentation will be. So reactrouter.com. Here you have like really good examples on how to use it. Finally. Yes, so I'm going to install the npm router now. So npm install was it React this? So this should definitely install much faster. It's quite a light package. So this yeah, I should probably zoom in a little bit. Okay. So yeah, this you probably recognize already. Like every time you create a new React app, this will have the the rotating image. So let's do npm start and see what we've got here. I'm going to clean up everything. Just leave the main div. So install this again. Yeah, I installed things in the wrong folder.
Sorry, Jan, the video is recorded, right? Because I might want to watch it later again.
Yes.
Okay.
No worries. I know you have an exam, right?
No. But you usually say at the beginning that let me check the video, and you didn't say today. So.
Thank you. Good point. Yeah. No. This time I managed to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Something is really fishy with this project that I created. Normally this takes like 5 seconds or so. Yeah. Yeah, we can do some coding while that is being installed. So I'm going to copy some code here, like in the example I showed you on the slides. So first of all, I have to import all those. So to import all the components of a React router. So that's the first part. The next part is that I have to create a router, right? So that will be it. So that would be the the core component of our web page or whatever. And what I do here inside the router, I have a switch. Don't ask me why specifically it's like that. That's how someone decided it's the way to do it. And now we're going to start with the first route. So you also open and close it. And this will be, let's say, an about page. And we're going to have another route, which will be just a slash, meaning like the main web page. Yeah, also, this is definitely not looking right for some reason. What the hell? Okay. Yeah, I don't have time to go into it. For some reason, when I do npm install, a lot of the things start installing out of nowhere. So just to make things a bit easier, we're going to use an example that is already here. So the one that you have on GitHub. So I'm going to do npm start on this one. And before anything, I am going to remove some things. So we're going to remove all this routes from here. Yeah, I think I'm having some issues here. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, this computer decided to be slow today, so we'll just have to deal with that. Is it not npm install React router DOM? good question. Very good question. And let's see, npm react router, because I think that might have been the, no, it seems to be like this, npm react router. There is multiple other, like, again, as I mentioned, there's not only one type of, one way of routing things in your React app. There's multiple ways. So I think the React Router DOM is also one of them. Yeah, this also seems to be a package. Yeah, yeah. Let's see which one has more downloads. So this has 4.3 million. This one has 4.0. So that's it. The case closed. Now, and in general, like you have to, like if you're working on a serious project, there's probably some small specific differences here, which might be very important once you really get into the details of it. But if you see something downloaded this many times per week, it's most likely like both of them are quite legit packages, and you will have no problem of working with them. There might be some specifics, for example, depending on how you host this web page, where you host it, and I don't know, like there might be some differences. We're not going to go really into those today. Okay, so now if I go to localhost, yeah, there I go. I should see the main page. So here we don't have any like fancy routing yet. We just have, we say that, okay, if you go to the main page, you should see this paragraph. So surprise, surprise, this is what we see. Now we're going to add a second route. Let's say if someone wants to go to /about. And here is going to be something about me. Yes. So yeah, the second route. Second route /about should show us this paragraph. So we're going to go to this page. So this is if I go to the main page. If I go to this page /about. Yeah. Let's see what's why it's not working. Refresh it. Yes, there you go. Sorry about the confusion. So if you go to the main page, you see this paragraph. If you go to the /about, then you see this other one. So this is static routing, quite straightforward, and yeah, I think quite simple. The next part is, what you normally want to do is that you want to make, like this will probably be more than a paragraph. This is maybe ideally you want it to be like an actual web page, a large component or something. So something typical, what you would do, you make a folder called pages. So this example already has 2 pages in it, but this is a folder that you create yourself. And inside this folder, you can, for example, make you make a new file. I'm going to call this page, about page.js. I'm going to copy some of this stuff just to make it easy. I'm going to make a clean React component with a div. We have to give it that name, the about page. We have to copy this here and there. We're not importing absolutely anything for now. This will be a simple div with a simple paragraph saying something about me. Just another. We're going to add another piece of text just to show like that this is a more advanced component. So yeah, my name is Jon. So this is a very, very simple static React component. In app.js, we're going to import that component in the following way. Import about page from. So we have to look exactly where this is from. So we have to go to the folder /pages, right? Because it's in a subfolder. And then we go to / and about page. So this is what we created. So now we imported this component. So now instead of showing a paragraph, with this text, we're going to remove this, and we're going to actually put that name called about page. I'm going to save this. So main page / about. Yeah, you see this component. So now instead of, so ideally how your app is going to look like is that app.js will simply be a switch with all the routes. It's going to be like a map of your website. It's just going to say this goes here, this goes there, and so on. Your actual website, your actual pages will never be described in here. They will be in a folder pages. If your website is even more advanced, maybe you have inside pages, you have another folder with a group of types of pages, and each of the pages maybe has another folder with components, with the subcomponents from that specific page, right? So, for example, in About page, I can make actually a folder called About page, and inside it I can make the folder with components. And those components, I import them here and put them in the About page. So, yeah, this is just complexity that you're going to get into, as the more you work with it. But yeah, the main part is, even in the beginning, don't start describing your pages inside the router. It will just make your code messy in the first 1 minute, I guess. So this is a very simple static route. Now let's try to do some dynamic routing. And I think I'm just going to use the same example that I have on GitHub. We're going to make a Bitcoin tracker website again, but now with nice routing. So let's say the home page. Let's do the following. Let's say, actually, before I go into that, if you noticed, like now there's no way to go between the pages, so we probably want to connect that. So I think that's quite important to learn before we go into more advanced stuff. Let's say on the main page, right here, we're going to have a button. And this button is going to say, tell me about, okay, yeah, we're just going to call it about. It's going to be a boring web page. So we're going to have a button about. And this button, we should somehow say that we want this button to take us to this other route. So on click equals. Yeah, so inside this function, we have to somehow say that I want to go to this other page. So there is incredible amount of ways in how you can go to a different page. I mean, this is the web. This is the main thing of the internet, right? To be able to browse between pages. Like now, just for fun, I'm going to actually, let's say, I'm going to actually Google that. React, go to page, whatever, right? So how to navigate from a page to another in React. So we're going to actually see here that people give you so many options on how to do that. This guy gives you the classical JavaScript way, which in my opinion works, and it's fine. There's a more React-ish way in which you, what was it? Yeah, we have this link to or something like that. You can try those things yourself. There are some advantages, some disadvantages. But the main advantage of this one is that it's a one-liner. So, and it's like, dot location equals the location where you want to go. So I think this is as straightforward as it can be. And unless you're doing something very fancy and like, I don't know, very advanced with the routing, this works. So I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, there's multiple ways people will tell you how you can do it and so on. But let's try the simple one. So there's document.location, and I think there's also window.location that you can use. And you just have to say what is in your URL where you want to go. So also something to know, you can actually explicitly say something like google.com, right? So if I copy the whole URL of google.com, let's see if it works as simple as that. So if I click on about, that sends me on google.com, right? So that's a simple way. But if I am planning to navigate just within my web page and not go to like a different website, it's enough that you just use the / about. So you only describe, the whatever goes after the host name. So if I save this, I click on About, and that sends me to the About page. There you go. And if I go back, I'm back here. Pretty much. So what I can also do now is that on this page, I make another button, and that one sends me, instead of the /about, it sends me to this. So make a button to go. If you request, I shall do it. So I'm going to pretty much just copy paste this button inside the About page right here. So my name is Yuan. Here, I'm going to say go back. And here, I'm just going to leave a simple dash slash. So if I go back, it sends me here. There is one in the browser. Yeah, exactly, Alexander. There's one in the browser. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, proof this works. Static routing. This is quite simple. We did not learn how to do that with classic HTML pages, right? Like when we're just learning using it, because it's really quite messy the way things work there. But now you know a modernized way of how to do it. So there you go. Going routing between two static pages. So what we're going to try to do now. Let's see. Maybe I can show you some slides before anything. Yeah. So, okay, you know how to use a router. So what I want to build now, I want to make a web page. So this would be the home page. On this home page, when I click on, tell me about Bitcoin, we'll send it to another page, /Bitcoin. I'm not sure how readable this is, but so the idea would be that here, I want to show 3 buttons, and these 3 buttons, they will be dynamically created. And these buttons, each of them will route me to another sub page, /euro, /USD, or /GBP. And when I go on that page, I will see the live price of Bitcoin in that currency based on that path. Okay. So this right here, I'm going to roll back to that code in app.js. So coming back to what it was earlier today. So that would be the code. So exactly same code. This is what I have in my IDE now. This is the app.js file. Let's start with the static one. So what I say here is that if I go to /Bitcoin, I want to be sent to something called Bitcoin page. So you're about to see the code of that, but this is pretty much just another page, a static page, this one right here. So this kind of stuff you already seen. Static routing, going to another page. The next one, so this is the main page. I didn't put it in a separate thing. It's just like a paragraph, like this is the home page, what you see here. And on click, it sends me to this other web page. So this is what you've seen now with the About page. Same logic, right? You click a button and you're being sent to a different URL. So these 2 things are easy, but now we are going to learn about dynamic routing. So what's going to be the dynamic component here? It's the currency code. So imagine I have 12 currencies and I want a page for each of the currencies. Yeah, one stupid way, I guess, would be that I copy paste this 12 times. I explicitly write the number, like the letters, like USD, UR, GBP. I can go through writing each of them, and I would go to make a new page for each of those currency. And sure, that would work, but it would probably take me really a lot of time. So the option to it, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do dynamically? What can I do in such a way that I don't have to reprogram something, like to rewrite something 20 times or 30? And I have to look at which part of my logic is dynamic. So I still want a web page that most of the text is static, like price of Bitcoin in, and this is the dynamic part, right? Like the name of the currency. But the logic is the same one. And what I want to happen is that when I go to /Bitcoin/ this dynamic component, I want to be able to read that variable. So if you see here in the router, there you can use this thing, the 2 dots. And this 2 dots is pretty much like a standard in dynamic routing, even if you use that in your API creation in Express.js, you can use the same logic, right? If you want to have like the data about a user, for example, like /user/user ID or something like that, you don't have to create a new route for every user. You just say that the last part of your URL is supposed to be a user ID. And then your JavaScript will read that and know that, okay, I have to query that database, or I have to specifically show this or whatever. So here, this is how I declared this dynamic component, the currency code. And here, then what I do, I say that whatever like /Bitcoin/ no matter what I write afterwards, it's supposed to go to this web page, Bitcoin price page. So let's see a bit of what exactly is in this web pages. There's really nothing very special. So this is, again, the example that you have on GitHub. The Bitcoin page. Let's start with the static stuff. So first of all, this is a home page. Let me remove this. So this is a home page. If I click on tell me about Bitcoin, it sends me to /Bitcoin. And what I see here, yeah, this text and 3 buttons. Now let's see, where do I take those buttons from? So what I do here, yes, this is a static text that you see, so nothing special there. There's a div, and inside this div, I am looking at a state variable, and I'm creating a button for each of them. So let's see, where do I take this data from? So what I do here, I do if you remember the use effect, there was a quiz question today. Use effect with an empty array. This means that I want this piece of code, write this, like I want this piece of code to run when this component is mounted. And when this component is mounted is exactly when I go on this web page, right? And when I go on this web page, I want to run a function called getData. And what is this getData doing? It's doing the following thing. It's doing an API fetch. So this is something that I really hope most of you already did at least once. I have this API. It's an open API. You can just pretty much copy paste the URL. You can see yourself what's in there. Let me zoom in a bit. This is like a JSON with a price of Bitcoin in 3 different currencies. I have a nicer arranged version of this, but that's the main idea. I fetch some data from this web server. I parse it as a JSON. So inside this variable, I have that data. Before I move on, like, everyone knows what this is? Like, is anyone confused about these 2 lines and what's happening here? 3 pluses, is that confusion, or do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know.
Cool. Right. So so before, to understand what's happening here, this is a bit of more like intermediate JavaScript. Let me show you exactly what's inside that component. In fact, what I can do an inspect. I can look at network. I'm going to refresh this. Current price.json. There you go. So right here, zoom in a bit. This is the JSON that I received from this Bitcoin tracking API. This is the main part. I have something about time. This is if I want to know the exact time. I'm not using that. Some disclaimer, some chart name. And there's a key called BPI. Probably means something for people learning finance. I don't know. BPI, whatever. So when you open it, I have 3 other keys, EUR, GBP, USD, and each of them is an object on its own, and each of them has a code, a description, a rate, and some other stuff that I don't care about, right? So for each of them. Now, what I do here, basically what I wanted to do here is that for each of these currencies, I want to create a button, and I want that button to show this description. So what I want to do now, so what I want to do, I want to make an array where I have these descriptions one after each other. But that's not enough, because I also want to keep the description, but also the code, right? The USD. And you'll see later why do I need that. So I want to go from this let's say, complex object, I want to go to something like, I want to go to something like, I think it's better that I show it here. Something like an array like this, code GBP, and then maybe description. This would be like British pound or something. And then the next one will be USD. And this one will show dollar, right? So basically dollar. So what I want, like I want from this JSON, from this object, I want to just extract the code, and I just want to extract the description. That's it. So why I'm saying all of this is because here I did a one-liner of how to do that right here. So just look at this specific line. I do object.values of parse.bpi. So up till this moment, when I do this, I actually have an array with all of this, right? So this is up till here. Dot map. Can anyone say what dot map does? Anyone?
Applies a transformation to all array elements.
Yep. Yeah. So Nikita, iterates. That's also correct, but that doesn't only iterate. It also returns. It also returns an array in the end. If you just want to iterate through something, you can do for each, right? But if I do for each, I simply run a function for each of the elements. Dot map, it means that all of this together will return an array, and each of the objects inside that array is going to be the result of what this function will return, right? If it's still confusing at this point, like you can make it very simple with a for each and so on. But like, if you have questions more about this later, also you can ask. It's because like just this dot map saves me, like I don't know, 5-6 lines of code perhaps. So if you have complex code where you have to iterate through elements a lot of times, it helps that you make use of dot map. So anyways, what is dot map? What I say here, I say that for each of the elements, I gave it a name P, whatever. For each of them, I want to return an object where I only have the name. I created a key called name, and the name will take the value of description. So the stuff right here, the description, and the code, which will be the code of this element. So very simple what I'm doing. I'm pretty much kind of like filtering. I'm only taking the code and the description for each of the elements, and that's it. And I return it in this function, which means that in the end, I'm going to have that array of objects that I wanted. All right. Now, just for you to understand what's happening here, I'm going to print out the result of this. You see how it looks like. So I'm going to refresh the page, gonna look at the console. So there you go. I now have an array, and each element of the array contains a code and a name. Simple as that. That's everything that one line did. Okay, so let's not print that one anymore. So now with that array, what I do here in React, I say, I first of all, I put it inside a state variable. The state variable is called available currencies, and this is a function to set it. Initially, this is an empty array, and I'm not sure how fast the video is being sent to you, but basically, if I refresh the page, you can see for a very faint amount of time that those buttons are not there initially, okay? Because they appear only later once I run this, right? Only after I'm actually asking the web server, what currencies do you have? And it's like these 3 currencies. And okay, for each of them, I want now to create a new button. That's it. Normally, in a professional user interface, what you do, you add a loader, like a circle that goes around, and you say that this circle appears here, circle, this is JavaScript, circle here, and after you have your data, circle disappears. Very simple pseudocode, but when if you get into professional UI creation, you never let your web page empty, right? Like, imagine you go on Facebook and the posts before they load, like every time a new post loads, it starts filling up your, this, how do you call it, the wall. Yeah, basically you wouldn't even be able to scroll properly, because every time a new content loads, like something will be pushed up or down. So you always need other placeholders, or you need to show the user that something is being loaded. That's it. Okay, so for each of them, I say that I want to create a button, right? And this button, inside it has the name of each of the available currencies right here. So no surprise there. And what I want to do is that on click, when I click this button, I want to go to the web page called /Bitcoin/ and there comes the dynamic part in it, /code. So that will either be, back to the slides. So that will either be /USD, /EUR, or /GBP. Okay. So when I click, for example, United States dollars, it should send me to /Bitcoin /USD. Okay. And that will be the location of the web page. Now I have to also say, now in React, I have to say what happens when I go to that web page. So back to app.js. Here, you remember we created this dynamic route with a currency code, with the 2 dots. So this 2 dots is what indicates that it's dynamic. So when I go to this, I want this page to appear. So now let's see what this page is actually. So Bitcoin price page. So this page, as simple as the previous one, a piece of text, price of Bitcoin in. There you go. This is something dynamic here. We're about to see where that comes from. Is, and then here we actually write down that price. So both these 2 things are 2 state variables. We're about to see how we get their value. But that's it. Like at this point, this is basic React at this point. Now, something what I did here, I again fetched that data from there, but normally you would have like a separate JavaScript file, and that you would only fetch that data only once and then inject it in each of the web pages. But now for simplicity, we're just going to do the following. Here again, we specify that we do that same use effect. We're still getting the data when we start the server. We're downloading exactly the same code, absolutely the same code. However, we want now in this page, we want to extract. There you go. For example, if I press USD, I want to extract exactly the information about the currency that I'm interested in this web page. So I should somehow know that I should look at this object and not this other one. Okay. So that means that when I go on this page and I have this /USD, my code here should somehow be aware of the fact that I'm on this specific path. Okay. So one way to do that, that's a React way. So a very straightforward way, there's you can actually read the value of document.location. If you print that out, you're going to see this whole URL, but then out of this URL, you then have to extract stuff yourself. So that's the classical way. We're not going to go into that. We're going to use a React way. So I import again this library called React Router DOM. That's not supposed to be there. Yes, there you go. So that's where the other routing package comes from. So React Router DOM, you'll need this. You'll need to download this other npm package, React Router DOM. So those React Router DOM npm. There you go. So you'll need to install this other package as well. So that's the answer to your question, Alexandru. So yeah, if you want to read that dynamic route, apparently you also, you need this package. And yeah, honestly, this is things that you don't even observe sometimes because JavaScript just evolves as time goes. So every time there's a new package or something coming out. So yeah, you have to install this package if you want to be able to read that dynamic route. So anyways, and you import something called use params from this React Router DOM. And now, you remember how we created this dynamic component of the URL called currency code? So back to app.js, you see this specific name right here. So I want to extract this name inside this web page. And this function is what helps me to do that. So it's a React hook. Pretty much what that means, you can go into details later, to learn about it on the official React webpage. But what this is, it's a function, it's a helper function that allows us to extract those values. And here, the way you extract those, you use if you have multiple dynamic parts of your URL, because you can also have /currency code, but maybe also / something else, right? And if I want that part to also have access to it inside this code, that's how I would import it, right? And then I can program my logic with those two variables. But for now, we're only using one. Let's get rid of it. So there you go. So now inside my component, wherever I'm going to read the value of currency code, I'm going to get either GBP or USD or that other one, right? So what I want to do now, I am downloading that data from the API as it was there. And I want to specifically read this BPI with that currency code specifically from the URL. So just another reminder. So if I am on a web page ./USD, I want to go to the network. Give it a second. Yeah. So I want to specifically read this object .bpi one of these things. And one of those things, it's currency code, right? And what I do now, I say parsed.bpi, and I use a square brackets to be able to put this dynamic key of it. And I'm interested in the rate and in the description, right? So the description and the rate right here. I want to read those two things. And I created two state variables. So one, it's price. It's it's a number variable, I guess. The state variable and the setter. And another one called currency name. So this is just to have the fancy text appear there, and this is a string. So what I do now, I say that the currency will be parsed.bpi whatever code you're in now rate, and the currency is same one but with description. And then these two variables, price in currency and currency name, I then put them in this dynamic text right here, currency name, price in currency. And then I want that to appear on the screen. So that already appears. You've seen that happening. So again, when I just refresh the page, you see that this part doesn't appear immediately, right? Like it takes a while until it loads. That's the time it takes to do that API request. Yeah, so that's pretty much it actually about dynamic routing with the paths. Let me think if I'm missing anything. Yeah, so here in the slides you'll see that I already show like how that object looks like, and this is the code from there as well. Yeah, this is each of the pages, and like this is what to take care of each of them. Okay, I'll get to your question, Nikolai. Just give me a second. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything here. So I think that's pretty much it about dynamic routing. Question from Nikolai: what about React render.dom? React. Let me copy that. Is that a web page or something? Nikolai, can you give a more specific question? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so in the meanwhile, what I'm not going to manage to show you today, it's about actually a nice challenge for you to try, ideally in your group project, or if your group project somehow does not contain dynamic routing, what you can do, what I suggest you try, is to adapt this Bitcoin page in such a way that instead of going to /Bitcoin/USD, a nice challenge would be to go to /Bitcoin and then query parameter and then currency equals USD. So instead of passing, I'm going to copy this right here. So yeah, a nice challenge would be that you try to put that in a query parameter rather than in a dynamic path. So pretty much just Google exactly what I just told you, and you'll try it. You'll see it's very, it's quite simple. So here we're using like this use params to extract this currency code, and then later you'll see that you can also extract something else. Okay, Nikolai Drutse, React DOM render clock format date. It's used for creating a live clock. So React DOM.render, you'll notice that when you create this app index, when you initialize your React project with React Create App, you'll see that if you go to index.js, you see this React DOM.render, right? It's close to what you put down in the chat, React DOM.render. So React DOM.render, it's the function from React to render a component, pretty much. It's more or less like you can have some static HTML here. And I don't know how to say, but like you'll never really use React DOM.render. Like this is more for when you try to, for example, do server-side rendering, or you're trying to make a hybrid web page, or maybe if you're creating your own dynamic, like very specific dynamic React components. This is nothing really to do with routing. This is more of actually putting a React component inside HTML. I'm not sure how else to describe that simpler. Because so the way it works is that, let's see, there should be an index dot. When you go on your React page, let's say when I go on this local host, there's 1 millisecond before everything appears, in which only thing that the browser sees, it's this document inside public index.html. And this document, doesn't really, it just contains some static HTML, right? Some tags here, some manifest, some titles, right? So the title would be pretty much what appears here. So if I change the title to cool app, you see it changes here. That's my cool app. Then I have like body, and then there's this no script. So this is probably something which nowadays is not as relevant as it used to be back in the days, like when there was like web browsers that did not run JavaScript, right? Like that was something that was there back in the days. And this would be like what should appear in case JavaScript is not enabled in a browser. So if I'd open this from, I don't know, like a Microsoft Explorer, like Internet Explorer 1999 or something, I don't know, like this is what you would see. And the next thing is, now this is a div, and this div has an ID called root. And this is actually the static page that your web page is. Now, what React does, React is it's a pure JavaScript, let's say, component that dynamically changes stuff. Just like how you did before, like in the very beginning of this course, when you're like trying to find elements by ID and modify something inside them, that's how React does the same thing. So you have a main div with ID equal root, and your index.js says, so this is like how you inject React in your HTML. I'm not sure if I'm using the right vocabulary here, but yeah. So what you say here, you get element by ID root. So you're getting this element right here. And I want this to appear there. And what appears there, it's your app. And you go one level on top, and there you go, you're back to your actual web page. In reality, I personally never had to do any kind of modifications here, except for adding meta tags, but this is already when you go into social media pages and so on. But like realistically, you'll never really have to play around with this stuff. Yeah, so that was a long answer to your question. I hope I answered it. If no, just let me know in the chat. Okay. Any questions about routing before I move forward?
Yeah, so it seems in React everything is actually one page, right? This app component renders these pages. So let's say we, like Facebook, for example, it has to fetch user data.
Yeah.
Is React going to be faster than traditional index HTML pages and so forth?
Yeah. First of all, React was made by Facebook. Wait, let me think. Yes.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, it just sounded a bit strange in my head now. Yeah, so React was built by Facebook. This is very basic kind of routing, which I showed you here. In theory, I'm not 100% sure, but in theory, when I go to the main page, actually you can check that by here. I think I'm immediately downloading all the other pages. But just to be sure, I can go to sources. I can see what else is here. But I see that I pretty much downloaded all the... yeah, there you go. You see? Like I downloaded all the pages. So yeah, you're very right. Like if this will be a huge web page, it will be kind of, it will take a lot of time until I download all the assets, all the logic from each of them. For that, there's something a bit more advanced where you use private routes. And private routes have two main things. First of all, a private route means that someone is not allowed to see it unless a specific piece of logic is met. Okay. So for example, if you go on, if you imagine you have the /login and /home of your web page, I can think now. I have an example now from, let's say, like an app that we're building now at Elitech. Imagine you see this web page, right? And this web page, the only thing you see is this /login, and there is maybe a route called dashboard, right? If I go inside the web page, but if I try to go to it without logging in, I see this stuff, right? So that requires me to actually requires me to actually log in the web page. So I'm not sure what I'm. So yeah, never mind what this app really does. The whole point of it is that, see here, like if I go to app admin users, like I see something, but if I try, I'll open now an incognito window and I'll paste the same URL without actually being logged in, right? And this sends me back to login. And that page, I actually don't even have it in the memory of the browser. To do that, you have to, again, there's multiple ways how to do that. But yeah, React private routing. It's usually quite straightforward, but it requires you to put things in a separate folder. And I think it got a bit easier nowadays. So it's there is an option for that. So that's the first thing. React, yeah. So private routing. The other thing is it's about how you host your website, because now I'm running a development version of my website, and when you run it, normally everything loads up and like everything is in memory and everything just runs, right? I'll come back to you, Nikita. So yeah, so that's when you run it in development. When you actually build the app, which we're about to see, you're able to specifically say, yeah, these web pages are in these files and so on. And then depending on where exactly you're hosting your website, not everything will be loaded right away when someone goes in a specific URL of yours. That's it. Like you have to learn a bit about networking, a bit about web hosting. It's really not rocket science. It's just a bunch of configurations, honestly, at this point. But what helps to know is that if you do this routing as you do it here, it will not be a difficult part to then do this route optimization later when you actually release your web page. You can do this routing in a more stupid way, in such a way that later you're not able to do it. But this is pretty much a correct way that people use it. Okay, question from Nikita. Just to confirm, when do we use the argument props for the main function app.js? Yeah, when? You can use it anytime. So here, I think it will tell me that it's declared, but it's never read. So I can delete it. Inside any component, you can put props, and props will be used whenever you're actually giving a property or doing something with the property of that object. What I'm going, I have some time, so I'm going to show you again something about props in case you forgot. I'm going to make a static route here. We're going to create our about page again, and I have to import it as well. So I'm going to, so this is a React component without any props, okay? So if I'm going to my web page /about, yeah, I see that, yeah, you already recognize this. Now, if I go to this component, to the about page, I have this props, it tells me it's not being used. So if I delete it, honestly, like nothing is going to change. But now let's say I want to use a props, and I want to, I don't know, let's say I want to have two about pages, one in blue, one in green, let's say. I don't know. What I'm going to do is, let's say I want, I want, for example, the color of this to be, so style equals color equals green. Let's see if that works. Right, so let's say I want to have a green page, and I'm going to, instead of actually writing green, I'm going to say props.color. Yeah. And just for fun, I'm going to actually make another about page with props.name. Yeah. So now this component makes use of two properties. Now, of course, it makes sense that you bring that props inside here, right? It can be any component. App.js normally does not need props in case the question is specifically about app.js. But now what I can do, for example, I want about Ion. I'm going to make another about page about Toro. And now I can actually write those props, and I'm going to say name equals Ion. Here I'm going to say name equals Toro. So if I go to /about Ion, there you go. I see that property going in there, right? If I say, and if I go to this other one about eToro, I see this one there, right? Because this is a prop that I set to this component called about page, which you have access to it by this thing right here. And everywhere I'm going to use props.name, I'm going to see that. And now let's say I want to also change the color. So going back to my app.js, I'm going to say here color equals green or blue. So now when I'm going to go to about Ion, I see it's in blue. So those are properties, and those properties, they're meant to, like they're kind of like static sort of thing. Like it's when you want to have a component, but there's like this 2, 3, 4, 5 small things that are different, but the logic is kind of the same, right? So this way I didn't have to create a new page called about page Ion or about page eToro. I only had to say, okay, this is how an about page looks like, but there's some dynamic content inside it, right? So if you're actually, let's say you're building a blog post, a blog website, you're going to say that this is the typical way, the typical component of how a blog post looks like, but inside the content, the actual text is going to go maybe inside a prop or maybe inside something like that. Did that answer your question, Nikita? Cool. All right. So that was a fast recap about props, because I wasn't sure if I've also mentioned enough about it previously. So the next part is, how do you actually make a React web page? How do you actually host it? What do you do with it? Like, how can you actually give someone to try your web page, right? So if your friend is a developer, you can send him, your GitHub and tell him do npm run, and he can run and he can see your web page. But obviously, not all your friends are developers, and not all the clients are developers. So we're going to start with the basics. Now, every time you are doing npm start while in a React project, what in fact happens is that, npm start. What in fact happens is that there's like this JavaScript code that looks at what code you wrote here, and it runs a development version of your website, and it like hosts a mini web server in your computer. That's what happens when you do npm start inside the React in React folder, app, whatever. Now, that, like, if you want to actually run that, you have to create some files. And like normally, if you want to host this on a web server, you just want to just give someone like, okay, there's this bunch of files, you host them, and this is a web page. Because like before, you make the index.html file, right? You made maybe other files, you put some JavaScript, and everything was sort of referenced between each other. And wherever you put those files, those files were pretty much the website on their own. So with React, you need one extra step, because what we have here, this is not JavaScript, like pure JavaScript and pure HTML. This is JSX, right? So this is not something that your browser natively understands. JSX is something that specifically in React, it makes sense. It's something for you as a developer to make your life easier, but it's not something that the browser understands. For that, you need to build your web page. You have to actually like pretty much compile. You have to tell your React compiler that, okay, I want to now actually generate all those HTML, JavaScript, like pure HTML, pure JavaScript, and pure CSS files that a browser is able to understand. So to do that, you do npm run build, enter. This usually takes a while. Meanwhile, maybe I have some theory here on one of the slides. So yeah, what it tells us here, yeah, it creates an optimized production build. And also keep in mind that, yeah, it's an optimized build, which means that your code will be like minified meaning that all the extra spaces are like deleted and it becomes like lighter and so on. And it doesn't have all this like debugging capabilities like you have normally. Oh, that's it. I create the web page now. So what happens now? I go to the folder of my project, and this folder wasn't there before. So the folder called build. So inside the folder called build, if I go inside it, I see several files. I see an index.html. And what happens now, I should, one second, I lost one of the screens. Give a second. Okay, sorry. Yes. So if I now take all these files and host them, for example, with that live server, I will see exactly this, right? So if, for example, you're looking to one of those, or for example, if you're looking to one of those like free hosting services, like what was it? GitHub free host website. What was it? GitHub Pages, right? So I can pretty much take all this output, all these files, and put them inside the GitHub Pages, host them, and there's our website. Okay, so yeah, and if you want to look a bit through these files, they will not really make much sense to you. What you see here, like they have some programmatic kind of names. There's some CSS here, and if you go to this, chunk.map, what was it? Yeah, to this main file, you'll see that all your code is in one single line, right? Like it's just completely terrible, not for developers to read, but definitely very easy for your browser to understand what's happening here. So what all this nasty looking code like, what this code is, it's actually the code that we wrote up till now in a minified version and something that the browser actually understands. And if you look, if you look through a bit of this code, I just seen something here that I recognized. For example, here you see that URL. You saw that URL right here that we're using. We see some code that we don't recognize. Then that map function with the BPI. So anyways, like pretty much all your code was compressed and pushed in this one file, all your logic. And what's important is that the browser understands that logic. So that's a good thing to try out is try this GitHub Pages. Other free hosting things is like I think on WordPress you should be able static page host. Yeah, I'll try to tell you a bit about those things next time. Netlify, good one, Netlify. Okay. Yeah, so next time we're going to learn a bit about Firebase and a bit about Google Cloud and how you can do some of the hosting there. So this kind of stuff we're going to open next time. Maybe some of you will be able to follow up on the Firebase. I think on Firebase, you're not supposed to use a credit card. I'm not 100% sure. I can actually give it a check right now. Yeah, pay with you go. Yes, I think you're able to actually get a plan without putting a credit card. So yeah, if we're going to use Firebase next time, maybe you're able to host your web pages for free, which would be cool. Yeah, so that was about how to create a production build. And in general, I think this is kind of it about the theory for today. Just to make sure I'm going to give it a check. Meanwhile, you can start thinking about some questions about React or about routing and about the stuff that we've seen today. So anyone? Any question? Was it really clear what's happening here? When we'll have the meeting with groups? Okay, so I'm not sure if I mentioned that clear enough. I already have had some meetings with some of the groups. You just like type me a message and say, okay, we're free on that day, and I'll try to get to you on that day. So that like team by team, just figure out when. I already had some talks with some teams, like really quite some solid ideas, and I think things are going nicely. Also, if you want, if you feel that you're having issues with your project management, Utoro can help you as well. So reach out to him as well. He will reach out to you to ask you about the progress, to ask about like the technologies and how are your things going. So that's pretty much it. But the initial meeting group, just reach out to me and we'll talk. Okay, so releasing the app for production. So as I mentioned, things appear in the build folder, and that generates all your static HTML, JS, and CSS. That's right there. No, what did I just do? So a list of the things to explore in your own. Try to use query parameters with React Router. So like I described it before, so instead of just having the /Bitcoin/ whatever currency, you would have a query parameter called currency, which is equal to whatever currency you want to look at. Another thing to try out, for example, in the example that I gave you, I do this API fetching every time I go on a new page. A very interesting thing to try out is to actually have a JavaScript file that contains the information that you fetched only once, and then you can use it in all the other routes. Something that I could tell you that, it might be useful. It will be useful in your group projects, at least most of the ones that I talked with the people about. Look into that. And you can try that GitHub pages if you want, but otherwise next time we'll try to see what we can do with Firebase. And definitely apply your new React knowledge into your group project. And in fact, this is it with the theory for today. And now we have a lot of time for questions or whatever you say. So I'll be here for 5-10 minutes. You can throw in questions. It can also be about your group project if you think it's something relevant for more people. So just shout out.
How about deploying our own API, the Express and Node?
Yeah. So for now, you also ran your Express.js only in your local machine. For that, you need something more than just simply free hosting of web pages. For that, we'll try to do that with Firebase together. Or what ideally you need, it's something like Linux server line. And there's so many servers that, Ubuntu Free Online Server, for example. What is this? No, never mind. Okay, let's start with the professional stuff. So, for example, in Amazon Web Services, you have something called EC2s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And EC2 is pretty much a virtual machine. It's a Linux server somewhere in the world, in Frankfurt or whatever. How did you here before? Never mind. Sorry, your camera did a very funny glitch. Sorry. So yeah. Anyway, so this is pretty much like a Linux server somewhere there in the world that you connect to, and with a command line you can run npm start, npm whatever. The only difference is that that PC will be like somewhere there at a URL that people can reach. You can also make a web server out of your own computer, out of your own router at home, but that's only if you own your own router. If you live like in a shared house, or sometimes like large complex apartment complexes, maybe you don't have access to your router, but the idea is that you can tell your router that everyone that goes to your IP address, they should like be routed to a specific port of your computer. So that's how things were done classically back in the days. And that actually saves you money because you don't have to pay anyone to host your stuff. So and actually that's very okay to do. And like something that we were even using, and actually that's very okay to use, like there's this things called Raspberry Pis, which is a 35 euro computer with, it can even be up to 4 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, as you can see. It's really small. It's smaller than a phone, and it's a Linux computer that can run web servers. And honestly, like for this amount of computation power on Amazon Web Services, you would pay that price of 30 euros per month, and I'm not joking. So if you have your own router and you are working on a development version of something, it's really cool to use, either an old laptop that you don't care or whatever. But if you actually want people to have proper access, like if you're actually hosting something that hundreds of people are going on that web page, you better put that on a cloud service, because otherwise your internet at home is going to become unusable, because all the traffic is going to be used by your web server. And yeah, so Amazon has these things called EC2s, which are pretty much this on a cloud somewhere in a nicer professional way. So that's how you'd host your Node.js and host pretty much anything. It's like, and Firebase has something for that in a bit more dumb, easier way, but it also works. Yeah, so that's about Node. Any other question, anyone? No. Was it quite clear? Is it something that you feel you're going to be able to adapt to use in your projects? Yeah, quite not much activity today. All right, then we're going to do the typical thing. I'm going to be here for another 1 or 2 minutes. In the meanwhile, I can tell, have a nice evening, everyone. Thanks for being here at this lecture. And I'm here for any other questions that can pop out. So, goodbye for whoever is leaving now.